Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. Tess, can you give me a thumbs up if because you're the only one I can see. If you can see my screen, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Oh, we've got another person joining us. Oh, lots of people joining us now. So, thank you so much for being here today. My name's Isabel. I work at Buckinghamshire Mind, and I lead our mental health anti-stigma campaign called Champion the Change. And it's all about starting conversations, raising awareness of mental health to help people feel more empowered and able to ask for help with their mental health. So we are here today to do our lived experience eating disorders talk, and we have the lovely Tessa Peters here with us today. Hi, Tessa.
Hi, Isabel. Thank you so much. Yeah, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Tessa, and I'm the founder of the charity Been There. So you'll understand why I've started Been There in a second when I tell you my story, but it is just a little brief. It's lived experience mentoring for body image and eating disorders, and it's for over 18s, hence why it's not really going to be much of a conversation today with the child and adolescents focus. So we're just going to have a little, we're going to have a chat later with some Q&As, but I'm going to start with my story. What are eating disorders? There's different types of eating disorders, spotting the signs in children and young people, and what we can do about it. And then also how we can talk more openly about eating disorders and challenges in general. So I'm going to jump straight into my story. I was quite an overweight child. I've latterly correlated this to childhood trauma, but I very much felt like I didn't fit in. Like I felt like I wasn't really good at anything. You know, you're desperate at that age to fit in, aren't you? And the size was a big contributor to that. And there was a lot of eating for comfort and control and a way of coping. And I grew up in a household where there were foods that were demonized, like some foods were demonized, and we could only have sugary treats on a Saturday, and the larder would be locked. Definitely found the key to that. And I really did feel like quite inadequate in my circle of friends. In fact, there was a couple of significant moments to me through growing up where it really made me feel like the odd one out. And there was one in particular where there was a party, and on the list there was like people who weren't allowed in to the party, and it said no fat people allowed, and I think there was also like no gingers as well. So it was demonizing a lot of people, and yeah, not being able to go to the party when all my friends were allowed in was a really hard moment when you're only 14 years old. My mom and dad really wanted me to lose weight. They thought, you know, she just needs to lose weight and then she'll be fine. But I was miserable. And I got taken to Weight Watchers, dietitians, I even went to fat camp. I remember I was like at this rowing thing, and I looked around and I was like, I wonder where I am. And then I asked my mom, is there like some sort of correlation with there being overweight people? And she was like, yes, sorry, that is definitely fat camp. And I just felt mortified. And it was like no one was really focusing on like why I was overeating and miserable. It was all just focused on, all with the best intentions. Like, I love my mum and dad. They were doing the best with the information that they had. And at this point, diets were pretty much my everyday life. And then when I was 18 years old, I started a ski season, and I watched a program called Desperate Housewives. If any of you guys know, it's an American sitcom, and there's a woman on there called Gabby, and she actually says to these kids on the program, she says they're like being models, like model kids, and she says, you can eat the pizza but just chuck it up after. And I thought, oh, what a clever idea. I was already desperately trying to lose weight, going from diet to diet. This must be a great method, thinking I was some sort of robot and it would just go in and out. And I actually accidentally really started dabbling with an eating disorder without even really realizing. And this was the start of my eating disorder. And I went looking for, after being on a ski season, I went looking for a job on super yachts. If anyone knows the industry, it's like very image focused. You have to have a picture on your CV. And I went off to France with one of my friends, and we asked, there was a job advertisement on the boat. They said they're looking for a stewardess for the season, and we both applied immediately. And the chief stew came out and said, "I'm going to interview you right now, like come down to the crew mess." And we got interviewed, and then she said, "I'm going to give your friend the job because you can't fit into the uniform, Tessa. You're too big for the uniform." And at that point, my eating disorder just went, like, I could have literally said, if I had a bit of resilience and empowerment, I probably could have turned around and been like, stuff that. I don't want to go into that industry. That is not healthy. But instead, that actually made me go the other way and really and drove me to want to lose weight even more and try and fit in and be liked and get a good job. So I ended up struggling with bulimia for 11 years, and I would binge on food and make myself sick like 10 times a day. But at that point, I still wouldn't even know, I wouldn't admit to myself that I actually had an eating disorder. I couldn't bear. Those words were like, oh, no. And I even actually eventually did get a job on a yacht, and I was in fact, a chef with an eating disorder, which probably isn't the best combination. But only now I know the implications doing something like that can have on you, which is quite sad. And I did used to say, like, I wish I could come out with warts or something to just stop me from doing what I was doing. That's why bulimia and some of the eating disorders are really quite dangerous, because you can't tell. So I kept it a real big secret for such a long time. And then when I realized I needed to get better, I literally couldn't stop making myself sick. I was like, I'm just going to stop making myself sick. That's what I need to do. Right. So off I went, and I'd write down the days in which I was not managed to make myself sick. And it would just keep happening again. And I'd just constantly be so angry with myself for just being rubbish and not making myself sick, rather than why was I doing that? So I tried different methods of help. I went to therapists, I went to counselors, I went to personal development courses. I even tried a secret Instagram page where I'd only post like below my mouth, which was quite cathartic, but still with a focus on not making myself sick. And then there was a really profound moment for me when I was actually managed to find somebody who'd been there, hence setting up Been There, because it's really amazing when you can talk to somebody who's been through something similar to you. It's really profound, and it helped me not feel so alone and ashamed, and it helped me to share. And that was part of my recovery journey. But I just wanted to touch on my recovery journey and some really key points that were through my recovery, but I need to do now. Like, they're still very evident, really important nuggets, which is to get to know yourself. Like, I didn't really know myself. I was completely judged. I judged myself off what other people thought. So it was a real self-discovery of who I am, what I like, a lot of self-reflection work, which I think is even still really important today. I developed compassion for myself. I remember even Googling the word compassion, being like, what even is that? And empathy. Like, I just couldn't, it's a known thing actually within eating disorders to not be able to be very empathetic or compassionate for others and yourself. And that was a real learning curve of what is this kindness to yourself and understanding and acceptance, and really trying to develop that relationship with myself, and still do. Forgiveness. This was one of the biggest parts, and definitely still is. There was a moment when I was actually back on the boat and I made myself sick, and I was so annoyed at myself. I was like, oh, you're back doing this again. And I remember calling my cousin, which I would never do. And she said to me, Tessa, this is where the magic is. Can you actually forgive yourself and feel that forgiveness in your heart for yourself, and stop getting so worked up about it? And I did. And I continue to do that to this day. That real feeling, you can be like, oh, I forgive myself. But if you're really acknowledging that forgiveness, it's very empowering. And sharing and having that vital support network. I felt like I did. I pushed my support network away for a very long time, but actually realizing you really cannot do this alone. And we need people. We need to share and we need support. Taming the inner beast, which is also known as the inner critic. That's a very common thing with eating disorders, is we have this potent inner critic that is constantly angry with us, not good enough, all of that kind of notion. And I mean, we all have it. I have it, like constantly putting ourselves down. So really like taking the time to learn and understand what was going on, and taking the time and space before acting upon any of these inner beast thoughts. And ultimately, it came down to finding new ways of coping that weren't destroying me, because the eating disorder was destroying me from the inside out. You can move on to the next slide. It's really hard to talk when I can only see one face. What are eating disorders? So it's Eating Disorders Awareness Week, and it's great we're having more conversations about this. And it's really important that we all educate and support ourselves so we can help ourselves and others about this. But we do have a bit of a warped perception of eating disorders in general. And I was going to get people to put their hands up, but you can write it in the chats. What percentage of what do you think the answer is? What percentage of people struggling with an eating disorder do you think are not underweight? So it's either 28, 85, or 12. You can pop in the chat what you think. Anyone? Oh, here we go. Okay, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Yes, it's in fact 85. So 85% of people are not underweight with an eating disorder. So we do have this like misunderstanding going on with everyone with the eating disorder world. That's why education is so important, and having conversations like this. So it's great you're here. So eating disorders they're estimated that 16% of the UK population have positively screened for eating disorders. So that just shows how common it is. And then eating disorder is categorized as a mental health condition where you use the control of food to cope with feelings and other situations. Another pretty horrific stat, which is why we need to have more conversations like this, is that hospital admissions for eating disorders have actually risen by 84% in the last 5 years. Next slide. There are different types of eating disorders, and I'm just going to touch on the main ones, which are, have you got them? Can you do the next slide? And I've got it here. Amazing, thank you. Binge eating. So this is when you're eating large amounts of food and you feel really uncomfortable. Anorexia, which is a serious mental health illness with the highest mortality rate than any other mental health condition. It is when you control your weight by not eating enough food and exercising too much. Bulimia, as I touched on in my story, this is this binge cycles followed by vomiting, even laxatives, fasting, exercising, basically anything to try and not put on weight. AFRID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It is a condition characterized by a person who's avoiding foods. This has become quite common these days with like fussy eaters. There's this thing about how a lot of people come into eating disorder treatment who are vegan, because that's kind of like a step into trying to demonize foods, and you kind of have to be wary if people have an eating disorder, people have using it as an eating disorder tactic or not, which obviously has become more like widely recognized and normalized. And then other specified feeding or eating disorders. Now, no one really knows about this one, but in fact, 30% of people who seek treatment for eating disorders have this. So this is basically when people don't quite meet the criteria of other eating disorders, and they'll be categorized as OSFED. OSFED. Next slide. I feel like I'm rushing through, and is everything okay? Cool. Spotting the signs for children and young people. This is a really great infographic from Beat. eating disorders, if you guys know it. So I even think it's helpful to have these kinds of things like printed out of school, if any of you are teachers. So lips, obsessing over food. This is like when people are cutting out snacks, eliminating certain bits from their diet, or eating in private, not joining in family meals, obsessively cutting out calories. So anything to do with food, and are they being quite obsessive around it? Flips. This is really common to have quite irrational behavior, particularly if you're under eating. It's you're malnourished, and that is what will happen. You can go in a depressive state or very irritable. So really watching for those behavior changes that they may have. Hips, have they got a distorted view of themselves? Do they claim to be fat? Are they mentioning the words fat and size and body shape a lot? Have they been losing weight quickly? Or even noticing if they're wearing baggy clothes? That's been quite common. I've heard from teachers where a lot of kids won't want to wear swimming costumes into the pool because they don't want to show their body off, so they'll wear big baggy t-shirts and things to cover themselves up. Kips, yeah, you can get, when you're not eating enough and restricting and things, get tired a lot and also struggle concentrating. Like I'm sure you've noticed on those days where you're like desperate for some food, you're just carrying on working, but actually you're not really cognitively there. So yeah, really noticing those signs, particularly at school. Nips, do they disappear off to the toilet a lot after meals? So correlated to bulimia and yeah, wanting to use the toilet after they've eaten. Skips, have they started exercising a lot? Are they talking about exercise a lot? Is it are they losing weight quickly because of it? So really important. I love the way they've done those. They're really easy to remember and quite easy to spot. But all of that's great if you can notice it. But then what do we do with that information? And I feel like a lot of us are so scared about talking about eating disorders. Can you go on to the next slide? Because it's seen as this really big, scary thing that maybe only the professionals can do. And of course, professionals have their place, and we'll talk about signposting in a bit. But what I'd love is I would love you all to feel empowered after this conversation, to feel like you could actually talk to somebody who's suffering with an eating disorder. And I've got a few ideas of how you can do that based off my lived experience. So yeah, like I said, it's really easy to suggest getting professional support, but sometimes there are waiting lists. Sometimes that's really hard to access. Sometimes it's really hard for them to personally access and make that steps. So can we be that consistent level of support for them? And at Being There, we call it sitting on the bench with somebody. When I first told my sister that I had, I think I had an eating disorder, I instantly felt so ashamed, so down here. I felt so far away from feeling relatable. I felt so ashamed. But if she came to my level, can we come to each other's level and sit on the bench with somebody and be that consistent, safe place for support while they get treatment, and be a safe place for them to open up? Secondly, education, like I said, about you guys all being here tonight. This is really important for us all to understand. A lot of people don't know much about eating disorders, and we can equip ourselves with this information that could be really helpful for others. Reducing the shame and stigma. I mean, we always talk about this, and that really comes down to us talking, us sharing, us listening. One thing that I would say is really important is to get curious and don't be afraid of asking questions. It's so you can see it as this really big, scary thing, but actually they're just a human, and we still need the same important aspects: validation, feeling heard, feeling seen. So we can do that just by holding space and asking questions. And I remember some moments on my recovery journey where people would ask me questions. Well, why do you do that? Why do you think you do that? And what do you want to do instead? And instead of trying to fix, we are so good at fixing. Oh, I've got the answers. I know what to do. Even last night, I went for dinner with my friend, and she was just telling me what to do with a situation. And I was like, it's so disempowering to just tell somebody, I'm not going to do it. It's like when my mum tells me to brush my teeth growing up, I almost just don't want to do it because she's telling me. So it's stop trying to fix. That's what I mean by the bench analogy, like meeting somebody where they're at and not trying to fix, holding space and asking a lot of questions. And even equally asking them what they need. What do you think you need? And if you can't tell me now, can you think about what you think you need? Because that just does need a bit of time and space for them to acknowledge and understand what they think they need, particularly as a youngster. Next slide. How to talk more openly about eating disorders and challenges in general. This was kind of amalgamation of the slide previously, but we can actually learn quite a lot from all of this. It correlates to learning about many other things in life, other challenges in life. Being more aware of what might be going on for somebody, the power of sharing and holding space, and just the importance of being there for each other. It's like we just live these such busy lives, don't we, that we just leave it to the professionals, but we have such a place in society to hold space for each other and learn how to listen and learn how to be there, which actually takes a lot because it's not happening enough. So I wanted to talk about this slide because of how powerful it is to share your own vulnerabilities, whether you have a story to do with eating disorders or not. Once we can talk about our challenges and our vulnerabilities, it bonds us. You know, those relationships that you have in life where you're like, I feel they're really great friends with somebody. It's most likely because you know their deep, dark secrets and you know what they're ashamed of and you know what they like judge themselves for or what have you. Like it bonds us. That vulnerability is so powerful. So if we can share some things that are going on for us, it really encourages other people to share. I genuinely grew up feeling like my mum was like superwoman. Like she just, even when she had like something bad happen, she'd still just be this positive light, which was gorgeous. But it made me feel like nothing ever bad happened to her. And I felt like I couldn't talk to her about what was going on for me because nothing bad ever seemed to happen to her. And how was I supposed to open up about what was going on for me? So it's really important that we can actually create those bonds and create those safe space to talk about it and share in a powerful way that can encourage other people to share too. When I told my sister, as I said earlier, I told my sister when I was at a pub, we were at a bar back at home, and I told her that I made myself sick because at the beginning I thought it was quite clever. Like I thought maybe she would want to try. I did lose weight at the beginning, not for very long. And she immediately said, "You have a problem." And that's where I didn't want anyone to think I had a problem. I wanted to run so far away. And that just made me think about the importance of how we talk and how we can, when people are sharing something with us, what can we respond with? You have a problem is not a nice conversation to be having. If we're having more of a conversation starting with I am concerned for you, I think we should access some support for you, you know, that kind of thing, rather than demonizing and bringing a lot of shame to what might be going on for somebody. A couple more things to help talk more openly about eating disorders and challenges in general is to choose the right setting. So I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever had conversations when they're one-to-one, like face-to-face, eye-to-eye, it can be really intense, particularly if you're saying, I'm concerned about you, and you're bringing up a conversation like that. If you could take them on a walk, create a different safe space. Walking is what I personally love to do because then you don't actually have to look at somebody in the eye, and you can be quite cathartic to have those conversations in an outside setting. So something that could be quite helpful if you wanted to bring up a conversation with somebody. And that was it. I just wanted to say, like, we can all learn so much from each other, particularly even if we have different stories to share. And it's just, as soon as we start sharing and bringing more light to challenges in general, we can really destigmatize and bring about a lot of hope and positive outcomes for people. Oh my gosh, we're almost on time. I've got to sum up So I just wanted to sum up, like eating disorders, they may seem so complicated, but if we can all learn to create a safe, judgment-free environment where people can share with each other, that is the best thing. Please do not underestimate the power of listening and making people feel validated, heard, and seen. So powerful.
Okay, support services in bucks. So CAMS Eating Disorder Service. So CAMS is a NHS mental health service that focuses on the needs of children and young people. The service has a specialist team that supports young people under the age of 18 and their families with eating disorders and body image. The service accepts referrals of suspected eating disorders from GPs, other professionals involved with young people, such as school nurses, as well as self-referrals from young people and their parents. So this is a service that, as a parent or a carer, you can self-refer to. Their website also has good information about eating disorders and body image, and also advice for parents and carers. Okay. Also, Buckinghamshire Mind has now launched a young people's counselling service. Now, this is for children aged 13 to 21 living in Buckinghamshire who are facing emotional and mental health challenges. Our counsellors don't specialise in supporting young people with disordered eating directly, but we can work on thoughts, feelings around eating disorders and the why, which is what Tessa spoke about earlier, why the eating disorder has been a coping mechanism. And yeah, so we'll send you the information for this. National support services, there's a website called Beat, which is I think it's one of the biggest eating disorder charities in the UK. So they have a national helpline to help people get support quickly. Their website offers advice and information on eating disorders. They have information on body image as well, body image issues. And we'll be sending you a link to their articles. COOF is another national support service. Oh, sorry, I've just got someone waiting to come in. Put that in. Yeah, COOF is another national support service. They offer free, safe and anonymous online support for young people. They have an online chat service which children and young people can use. And there's also Young Minds, which has free advice and tools for young people on their website, as well as advice and information for parents. And we'll be sending a list of useful articles to you. Yes, so just before we finish up, let me just stop sharing my screen. Just before we finish up, if I could just ask you to please complete the poll, which should be coming round now, just to give us some feedback. It's anonymous. So we are funded, we're a charity. So to be able to put on events like this and provide information like this, we really rely on feedback. So if I could please ask you just to complete this, it should just take a couple of seconds. And then we'll finish up.
You put it in the chat?
Well, it should have popped up.
I haven't got it.
Up.
No.